Joining me now is former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, also become a friend, and that is really meaningful to me. So thanks for being here. And this is, of course, Perino on Politics. I call it my smart friends and find out what's on their minds about the state of American politics. So I guess I want to start with the big, beautiful bill. This is a gigantic piece of legislation. You've been a part of these. It's not pretty. It's not a great way to do it. But it's the way that we're doing it right now, and this is the possibility for President Trump to get his big first legislative win, even though it's on a knife's edge.
Yeah, but for your listeners and viewers to understand, there's a reason why when you describe it as this isn't the way, it's not pretty, structure dictates behavior, okay? And the way we're proceeding is called through reconciliation, which is inside baseball, which allows you to make a reduction in spending in mandatory funds, not discretionary, mandatory only. Mm-hmm. This is the way the Democrats did Obamacare. This is the way we did tax provisions under Bush. It's what we did tax provisions before. And the reasons why you can only really do it when your party controls the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And the advantage to that is you don't need 60 votes in the Senate. But because you do it in this manner, there are certain things you cannot put in the bill. They have what is called the Byrd Rule. It's based upon Senator Byrd in the past, and it's the Byrd bath. And if it doesn't deal with mandatory spending, they throw it out. And that's why people get really frustrated. I don't like this bill. This isn't on it. Well, the structure only allows you to do so much. But the whole purpose of this bill is one thing and one thing only: to keep your taxes from going up. Because if this bill did not go into effect, all the rates on taxes would automatically go up. So now what they're going to do is they're going to lock these rates in permanently, and it's going to be paid for. There's going to be a few other provisions in here. No tax on tips. They're going to be able to do some things for the military. They're going to be able to do a few things for border protection. So when you think about just any normal bill going through, you'd want to make all these other things. Well, in the structure you have here, this really is a big, beautiful bill because it's accomplishing exactly what you wanted it to do. It's doing a few things the president promised on the campaign, keeping it, and it's protecting our military. So in that perspective, yes, it's a good bill. Then people will argue it also deals with the debt ceiling, which protects the president going forward. When they say out there, this is the biggest cut, they have to put a little asterisk there. It's only the biggest cut to mandatory. Because when we did the debt ceiling, we cut $2.2 trillion. This is at 1.6. We were discretionary. This is mandatory.
And can you tell people that might not realize why it's called the Big Beautiful Bill and what it's like to be a part of the naming of a piece of legislation? And I'll set it up this way. Way back when I worked at the White House, Council on Environmental Quality, President Bush had a big clean air effort, and it was called the Clear Skies Act. Mm-hmm. And reporters hated the name of the bill so much, and they would always say, the so-called Clear Skies Act. And I would call and say, actually, it is called. It is not so called. It is called the Clear Skies Act. And it happens on both sides. It's kind of funny. How does it work?
Well, what happens is usually the author, and I'll give you the inside story how this one got named. The author to the bill, every bill gets in and it has, if it starts in the House, an HR number 1 through 10 gets reserved for the majority and 10 through 20 for the minority. Then the rest, the number goes in just in the order of which the bill is submitted. Well, you try to think of a name based upon a description for the bill. And you put a lot of work into it. Sometimes you want to put an acronym that you can spell it all out. Sometimes you want to make it very great in the description so people refer to it all the time. I know Jason Smith was thinking about a lot in the tax provision of what was this doing for growth and opportunity. That's normally what it is. And he went in to see President Trump, and he had a lot of different names sitting out there. And the president says, no, I like to call it the Big Beautiful Bill. So that's exactly how they named it.
I know that in 2017, he wanted to call it the cut bill.
Yes. And we did not end up with that. But, the president, if you watched him through his campaigns, he's very good at branding certain things. And he does that when
Yeah.
he's out on the trail, and he uses focus groups. I remember this time we were trying to get Space Force. And we were out and we did a big rally. We've been working, trying to get it passed. And he called me the next day, and he had a number of the generals, and he goes, Kevin, tell him about how the crowd roared when I said Space Force. It was the idea of why we needed to make sure we had its own branch to deal with space. And that was very smart because the next war will start in space.
Yeah.
But he uses it intuitively. And that's how the big, beautiful bill got named. It was really the people.
I mean, he even does that with people, right? People he likes or people he doesn't, right?
Yes.
So little Marco is now his Secretary of State and every other cabinet position that isn't at the Agriculture Department.
Yes.
But he does it with people, and that can change depending on things. I do want to ask you about one thing, because you know both men very well. And Elon Musk hates the big, beautiful bill and thinks it's a disaster. And I can see why. I mean, honestly, I see both points of view on this and wonder what you think about Elon Musk's take on it.
Well, I see Elon's concerned, and he feels that it's unfair. And he's got some arguments there because when the Democrats were in, they did this Inflation Reduction Act that had nothing to do with inflation, had nothing to do with, and what it did was it made government subsidize only one form of energy, renewable energy, and it gave renewable energy a great deal of advantage. Well, Republicans come in and they're trying to wean that back. But what Elon's upset about, you're weaning one part, just wiping it away, while other forms of energy are getting these other subsidies. And so he felt that was unfair. Elon also gets concerned about the deficit, which is true. And this is where, like, the listeners don't always get, and I don't think Elon always gets, when you're doing a reconciliation bill, there's only certain things you can deal with. He says, why aren't you doing, because they can't deal with discretionary funding. He goes, why don't you make these cuts, these Doge cuts? We will, but the rules, remember, structure dictates behavior. Your behavior is you can't do that because the rules don't allow that for him. I think that's what frustrated Elon there. But listen, we want to be the leader in AI and quantum. Whichever country does that has the advantage. Mm-hmm. To capture AI is whoever has the right energy policy. We have to double our capacity right now. And that means we don't need to pick one form of energy. We need all forms of energy. We need the FERC to work better. We need nuclear. We need
FERC,
everything.
oh my gosh. Nobody listening knows what the FERC is, but I'm going to tell you a really funny story. My first job on Capitol Hill was in 1995. And after I answered phones for 6 weeks, I then got a job as the press secretary for Congressman Dan Schaefer of Colorado. And he was chairman of the Energy and Power Subcommittee. And my first press call was from Brian Lee of Energy Daily. And he asked me, hi, Dana, my name is Brian Lee, blah, blah. I would like to know what Schaefer thinks about the FERC meganoper. And I said, I had no idea what he was talking about. So I said, oh, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't hear you. He's like, the FERC meganoper. And I took a deep breath and I paused and I said, would you mind spelling that for me? Because I didn't know that FERC is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and a meganoper is a big mega notice of proposed rulemaking. And so I never forgot it. And that was the day that I started keeping a list. Now you would do it in your phone, but I had it hard copy, a list of all the acronyms that I needed to know. And FERC meganoper, I always remember it because it was my first press call ever.
And there are enough requests backlogged in FERC. If they got them through, we would double our grid right now.
Wow.
And see, this isn't an elected position, it's appointed. These are the types of things where I think President Trump is going to be so successful at, which would unleash, when he talks about unleashing American energy. And so Elon focuses on renewable energy. You've got to understand, he has built an unbelievable car, right? And Tesla is an amazing car, one of the best sellers, and he got into the business when the car business has already been around for 100 years. And the reason he did it, he said, look, when the Model T came out, the average mile per gallon wasn't much different than what it was at that moment. He was afraid of, if we don't harness the sun, we're going to fall behind. And he created a car in California which most people say the hardest place to do in California, ended up pushing them out, but it became a best-selling car. Now, there was an incentive to be able to buy it, but Elon was always right, take it away, but take away the other incentives too. And in this bill, when it passed the House and then it went to the Senate, there was a time that I think it was dropped off come December 31st. But I think in the Senate, they moved it up to dropping off September 30th, which is the year long for government funding. And that's why I saw a recent tweet he put out. I think that made him a little more upset as well.
And then let me ask you one other thing, because I think people are going to hear a lot about the bill as it's structured in the Senate right now before it goes back to the House, would take away health care from millions of people. Now, this is typically what, if it's a Republican-based bill, the Democrats will always say this. What should listeners know about those claims?
Okay, first of all, that's not true. So let's talk what it actually does, and let's talk about where you got this idea. So if you look at, and remember, this has to deal with mandatory spending. Mandatory spending is Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and interest on the debt, okay? All three of those trust funds are going to go insolvent in, I think, 8 years. So if you do nothing, you're destroying the country. So how do you safeguard it? So all it's saying within Medicaid, if you are able-bodied and no dependents. So who does that reach? You have to be an able-bodied person, meaning you're totally healthy and that you have no dependents. If that is the case, you're not kicked off Medicaid. You have a work requirement, okay? And I'm not specifically sure in this, is it 20 hours or not? Now, this idea came about in like 1995 when we wanted to reform welfare. And it went and got vetoed twice by Clinton, then finally signed. And then it went into effect. And people made the same arguments. Republicans are kicking these poor people off. No, what we found was it improved these people's lives. It helped them in job creation. It helped them get a job. Their income was higher. They didn't need government assistance. And their life was better. So this only for people on Medicaid that are able-bodied and no dependent. So it's a select few. You're still going to get your health care, so it's not kicking you off. But what it's really doing is it's making Medicaid safer for a longer period of time for those who truly need it.
Right.
And remember why Medicaid was created: for the blind, the disabled, and the pregnant. And how it worked is the federal government paid about 50% and the states paid about 50%. It's called an FMAP. They'll be a little off. But when Obamacare came in, they did something different. They took this Medicaid money and they said at the very beginning, federal government would pay 95% and then it'd just go to 90. And they encouraged all these governors to go get everybody onto that health care. And what they did is you could make more money and be on it. But those blind, disabled, and pregnant, they still only got 50% from the federal government. Well, the federal government is now paying 90% of all these individuals on there, and they cannot sustain that. Right. So what they're trying to look at, how are ways that we can protect it for those who truly need the help? And you've got to start making those changes now to make it last longer.
My last question, and for this segment, it has to do with a little bit of raw politics and a decision that was made quickly over the weekend. Senator Thom Tillis from North Carolina has decided not to run again. He is going to be a no vote on this. And President Trump was open to supporting a primary challenger for him. He's up for re-election in 2026. And he said, I think he read the tea leaves correctly. He's like, you can't fight City Hall. He's not going to win. And instead of trying to fight it, he's going to stick to his principles. And I imagine that he feels pretty free right now. That seat will likely stay in Republican hands. But the Democrats are like, well, maybe we have a fighting chance, since there are a lot of demographic changes happening in North Carolina, but maybe not quickly enough for them to win in 2026.
No, and I actually believe, look, I like Senator Thom Tillis, but it's probably going to be easier for Republicans to win the seat with a brand new person.
Without him.
Yeah. He was having a challenge to start out with just for a primary. And he went out and hired Trump's political team. So he knew this. And if people would tell you in working of this bill, he put a lot into this bill. And the way he got things in the bill was, I've got a tough election. So a lot of members didn't want what he was putting in. And I believe he got more than almost any member. He was taking things out that the House had passed because he said, I need it and I've got a tough bill. And then when he went out and said he wasn't going to vote for the procedural moment for it to move forward, I think most members of his conference probably said,
irritated.
Oh my God, I can't believe it. You're the one that made us do things we didn't want to do because you said of your race. So it's almost like he had this decision not to run in his head beforehand.
Well, in the lead up to the 4th of July, everyone, you're going to see fireworks in Congress, but ultimately I think this bill gets done, the president signs it, and we'll be off to the next thing. There was a little bit of a political earthquake in New York last week in the mayor's race primary, where you have this young Democratic Socialist named Zohran Mamdani. He won, beat Andrew Cuomo handily in that primary. And the reason I bring this up here is not because I think that anyone who listens to this politics is obsessed with New York City mayor's race. I don't think that. But I wanted to talk to you about it because I know that you look at trends over time. And I think that this guy who is being somebody put forward by a lot of younger people, a lot of single people, but not only. There were a lot of affluent white people on the Upper East Side voted for him too. Low-income people tended not to, but he won decisively. And Andrew Cuomo got embarrassed and humiliated. And I bring this up because I do think that this idea of taxing the rich more, not a message of economic growth, but a message of punishment, a message of restriction for some, redistribution of the wealth. He wants free rent. He wants to defund the police. He wants free grocery stores, government-run grocery stores, on and on. But the reason I bring this up is I believe, Kevin, that this is coming to a city near you. At least the younger candidates with an ability to communicate to younger voters who are highly motivated to vote, because I believe neither party is showing a political and policy pathway to achieving the American dream and having an affordable way to get a foothold and move forward. And President Trump talked about economic growth yesterday with Maria Bartiromo. That is the answer. And I think that their social media and everything is excellent at the White House. Excellent. But the Democrats are creeping up. And it's not just like, this is not your Bill Clinton Democrats. This is your Bernie Sanders AOC Democrats, and they are coming for power. And wanted to get your take on it.
You are correct, but let's break it down even further. Both parties have failed in solving problems. So the first thing that happens is people are open for something new. Cuomo was always going to lose because, think about it, he had to leave as governor for doing illegal things. And think about what he did during COVID and lying. So he was a flawed candidate to start out with. It's just that his name has been around for so long. Who was going to beat him? Now, this is where you're correct. This all stems back from Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is not an elected official that you're going to look in record and say, oh my God, he passed 400 bills. He really changed his life. No, but he's a movement politician. Yep. And what has his movement brought? His movement brought us AOC. His movement has now brought this new candidate for New York. And it's these ideas that they have instilled in them, right? And because of the frustration, and this is a scary part if you look on a macro level and you look at the history of a democracy. They say democracies, you start out strong because you're fighting for your freedom. But once a democracy finds out they can promise themselves free stuff, that's when they collapse, okay? And you walked away from. And what's so critical here, if you think about a city that's designed on capital, it's New York. Mm-hmm. And what has it brought? And why is that city so beautiful and so powerful? Because the capital allows you to build and grow and create something new. Well, this is going to the heart of capital, that we're going to have government-run grocery stores, free rent. There's nothing free in society. It doesn't help you. It keeps you down. Yeah. But he is also they found the kind of the right messenger. He's kind of a young, I've heard him described as Barack Obama. I've only watched his speeches. I never met him. But he was an assemblyman for 2 terms that people laughed at, right? Mm-hmm. Well, Barack Obama was sitting in the State House and they laughed at him before he ran for the Senate. But then there was a problem where the lead senator collapsed, and there's a window. Same thing here. The lead candidate collapsed. There's a window he came up through. Now, this is where the Democrats are really going to have to think about it. What type of party do they want to be? Because if they really move all the way towards socialism, it's no longer a joke that AOC becomes their nominee for president. Now, I don't think America goes there, but they're trending too far to the parts that got them in trouble. They have not learned what mistakes they have made. Now, President Trump was very successful in that last election. The party was not. We lost seats in the House. We lost seats in the Senate when our candidate won the popular vote. A Republican hasn't won the popular vote in 36 years for president. We should have run the tables on it. And we've watched President Trump bring more people into the party where now Republicans have a better chance of winning in large turnouts, which we didn't have before. But the question being is, are these people following President Trump? Or are they becoming Republicans? We watched President Trump win 49% of the Hispanic vote. You and I both know that has always been a dream of the Republican Party, but we've always truly believed it was just a dream, right? Yep. He proved it. And he taps into something, and this is where he's good. He's intuitive. I mean, he's probably had one of the most productive 3 weeks in almost anybody's presidential history. I mean, think about what he was dealing in Iran. Think about what he was dealing with Putin. Think about what he's dealing in the big, beautiful bill. And he's doing it all at the same time. I mean, it is historical for what took place over Iran. That's a Cuban Missile Crisis. That's tear down this wall. And at the same time, he's juggling. Then he's going to NATO. And then he just had Canada that was going to tax our tech companies, and now they just backed away. And he did it all in a week while he also went to a game of golf. He is always working and looking out. So that was very, very productive. But all those things with NATO spending more money on defense, that started 8 years ago. And that's why he's really getting into his form where the things that he had built upon, then the Supreme Court decision.
Basically saying that a lower court judge can't block his agenda nationally, and that was seismic. I want to ask you one other thing. So the House Oversight Committee is going down this list of people they want to interview from the Biden administration about the cognitive decline and the so-called cover-up and the auto pen, et cetera. I know that you knew Biden for a long time, from when he was vice president or maybe even when he was in the Senate, all the way through to today. If you're looking at that investigation, one, do you think it's on the merits that investigation should happen? Will we ever actually get an answer? I mean, this could be dragged out for a long time.
I don't know you'll get an answer, but it was very unique. I was one of the first to come out and say he has declined. And they made a really big effort to attack me from the morning Joes. Even when I worked with the Wall Street Journal and gave them examples, when that article came out, they got attacked by everybody, and they even got quiet. They should have won a Pulitzer for that because
Annie
they were
Linsky,
the first one.
We've interviewed her a few times because she did such a good job. And, she didn't write about Biden's cognitive decline with glee.
No. And a number of the parts got knocked out by our editors. She got beat up once the story came out. I would call her and say, don't worry. We didn't say anything that's not true. We didn't even get to say everything that we know, but we're going to be on the right side of history. And then when this comes out, they give somebody else an award somewhere. That's not true. I think the best, and this isn't partisan, it's a big discussion we're having in all of elected officials. There is a moment in time, and you could be even younger. And I think the family is at fault here and others. You cannot hold on to power simply because in your mind you think you're better than everybody else. If you don't have that capacity, and that's the uniqueness of the structure of government we design, somebody else can fill it. And you got to be able to walk away. And if you're really doing everything by auto pen, we know that's wrong. There's a place for an auto pen, but that is wrong.
That's for the welcome to the world letter.
Just not even doing press conferences, putting lids on it all the time. Right there, that told us a lot.
Remember they used to put a lid on at 10 o'clock in the morning?
I don't know if I'm 100% correct, but I think he put a lid on it when Israel got attacked. You cannot be the leader of the free world on October 7th and say, I'm putting a lid on it. Mm-hmm. When I would go to the White House, I knew it, right? That place is humming all the time. Nobody's there. When you walk in to see it, it's quiet. Just his behavior, he mumbles and goes off. And then I remember the famous time he was there. He didn't know where he was, and took me on a wild goose chase down to the swimming pool. And I was like trying to help the White House get him back in. Like I didn't want anybody else to see him this way.
Right. Well, that investigation continues, and so we'll see what happens. They're trying to claim some privileges, and I understand.
But there's a lot of people who continue to run for office because somewhere in their mind they decided they want to die in office, like you get some other fanfare. There's not a reason for those people to stay around. It's not healthy for their community or anything else.
What are you paying attention to that I might be missing?
Okay, a big court case or a big decision last week in Wisconsin. Remember they had this big fight for the control of the Supreme Court of Wisconsin? And it was all over. Democrats wanted to win that extra seat so they could redistrict the congressional lines of Wisconsin. They won the Supreme Court. That's kind of when Elon departed. They did not take the case up, the Supreme Court in Wisconsin. So they're not going to redraw lines. So that's how they wanted to capture. Oh. But there's no case that has to happen, but Ohio has to redistrict, okay? Because the way they did the reapportionment, the way they changed the laws, if they don't get so much of a vote, they have to redraw like every 6 years or something. So they do have to draw those lines. I think Republicans could have 2 seats. They have a couple seats there they already should be winning. And then Texas has been talking about redistricting as well. And if you look down along the border, which had always been, for as long as America had been, a Democrat stronghold, big, high Hispanic populations, really shifted Republicans. If there's small changes down there, that could be a couple more seats. So where Democrats thought they would politically go change lines to win the control of Congress, they said no. They have to redraw the lines in Ohio, so it could be 2 more. We could grow in Texas. It could be a case where normally they think Democrats are just going to control the House. Well, that may not be the case.
Are you having a good time? Enjoying your life?
I loved every moment I had to serve. I still feel I serve now by giving advice.
And doing podcasts.
And helping. Well, this is really the highest honor. I ran because I knew one day Dana Perino might interview me and then ask me to be on her podcast.
Well, I'll let you go get back to your day. We thank you for your time. Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Thank you.